please.
Yeah. So first, let me introduce. I am Professor Manoranjan Parida. I am a transportation expert. I work in the area of road safety, and I am also the deputy director of the institute. And I am associated with this NSS group, which Harkirat is the coordinator. And I am really thankful that you have agreed for delivering your lecture today. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I just extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of IIT Roorkee.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored that you guys found me. I don't know how I was found. I guess, I mean, obviously through the internet, but I'm very honored to be able to share my story today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Harkirat, we can start the YouTube live.
Yes. It's webinar is live on YouTube. Just let me start the recording as well, so that those who are not able to attend, they can watch the recording later. Just give me a second. Yes, we are good to go. Sure. Ms. Renee, you can start with your sharing experience and your journey all throughout.
Okay, so you just want me to just dive in? Just go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
Okay, hello everyone. I am Renee Lord. I live in Florida, which is obviously in America, and I am so grateful to be a part of your event today. Thank you so much for inviting me. And you may wonder why they invited someone from America to be a part of this event. And I believe it's because they found me searching for stories about how people have been impacted in whatever way by events that happen on the road. And I know this is a road safety event, and I've learned that it does not matter where you live. If you live in America, if you live in India, if you live in England, no matter where you live, road safety is needs to be a top priority, because so many people die in so many countries every year. And in our country, unfortunately, I don't know what the statistics are today, but I know that I've heard that every 15 minutes, one person at least dies in America due to a traffic crash or something happening on the roads. So what I'd like to do is just share my story with you today and just give you an idea of what I've been through personally, hoping that you will take it to heart, that you will not see me as someone who is not relative to your country because I don't live there, and just take it to heart and remember the events that you're about to hear when you're making choices, when you're driving, or even when you're a pedestrian, or whatever you're doing as far as road safety. So I grew up in Florida, and I was very fortunate. After I got married to my husband when I was 18, we had 4 children. The first one was a boy, his name is Alan. The second one, a girl, Michelle. And then I had identical twin daughters, Carmen and Meagan. And I'm not going to tell you everything about my life, but you have to know some of my background in order to understand my story. So I was married for 21 years. My husband divorced me, and then 3 years later, on May 11th, 2002, it was a Saturday morning over here. I don't know in India if you celebrate Mother's Day, but we celebrate Mother's Day in America. And the day before Mother's Day, May 11th, 2002, someone knocked on the door. And when I went to see who it was my sister-in-law. She had married my brother. And the news that she delivered to me that day was, there's been an accident. It was Meagan, who is one of my twins. She didn't make it. And it would be hard, unless you have ever received news like that, to fully understand the depth of that moment for me and the immediate darkness that I felt. But I can tell you that being a mother, that's a mother's worst nightmare, is to have a child die in any way. And here I was, not expecting this on this Saturday morning, and so my world just kind of crashed at that moment. Crashed and burned is I don't know if that's an expression there, but here in America, it is, and complete devastation. So my mind was going really fast. I was wondering so many things. And one of the first questions I asked my sister-in-law was, did she suffer? And she didn't know that answered that question. She said the only thing that she knew was that there was a young man driving a car behind her, and that actually my daughter Meagan was with her friend Lisa. Lisa was driving the car that they were in, and this young man hit them from behind, and they went into a tree in the median, and they were killed. And so finding out that, I asked, was he drunk? And she said there was alcohol involved. And so we went and met with the police, and then we went to tell my ex-husband. And those things that you don't even think about that people go through when something like this happens, you know, I was experiencing them that day. You know, the police were all, you know, they were devastated for me. They've been at the crash site, you know, and seen what happened there. And now I'm having to go with the police to tell my ex-husband, and showed up at his door, and he opens the door and sees me with 3 policemen and my sister-in-law. And he just looked at me and said, which one was it? Because he knew that one of our children had died. And so I told him it was Meagan, and that her friend Lisa had died too. And so that began our Saturday morning, and then we had to prepare for a funeral. And my other children, my son Alan lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is, if you drive, it's about 9 hours away from where I live. So my dad came and helped us get him on a plane to come home. My daughter Carmen, who is Meagan's twin, was in North Carolina with a friend, and she was, I don't know, 10 hours away. I'm not really sure. You know, she may have been about the same distance as Alan, and we had to get her on a plane and get her home. My daughter Michelle was living in Tallahassee at the time, and we had to get her home. So she and her husband, she was married by then, and they drove home. But I can tell you that, you know, all of these things I believe are very important to share with you today, because everyone needs to know the devastation that can be caused by one person's choice. And basically, as I've shared this story with so many people, I started sharing the story in 2004. And as I've shared the story, I've realized that it just boils down to one simple thing, and that is a choice. It's a choice that someone makes, the person who's driving, whatever choices you make when you are behind the wheel of your car or bike, whatever choices you make when you're driving, it affects not only you, but other people on the road. And so as I move through the timeline of the story of events that took place, the young man, his name is Eric, and he was 24 years old. And when I found out how old he was, it really struck me in my heart, because my daughter Meagan, my son Alan and Eric, the exact same age. They were both born in the same year, 1978, and they were 24 years old. And so I thought about my own children, and I know that none of us are perfect. Nobody makes the perfect choice every time. And I thought, you know, that could have just as easily been my son making a bad choice. Well, we went on, and Eric pled not guilty when he was charged with so many things: vehicular manslaughter, DUI, manslaughter. He was charged with several different, or vehicular homicide in America, and DUI manslaughter. And so we had to prepare for a trial, since he blamed another car for cutting him off and causing him to hit the 2 girls. And so we prepared for a trial, and in July of 2003, about 14 months later, we had a trial, something that I had only been a part of as I was on selected to be in a jury one time. And as ironic as it is, it was for a DUI. And that had been a few years prior to this. But other than that, I don't think I'd ever been in a courtroom witnessing a trial. And so this time it's about my daughter, and about a young man who took her life. And so that was a very emotional week, and for me and for my family and the Dickson family, and even for Eric's family, because this young man was facing, in our country, he was facing 30 years of prison, because he was facing 15 years for each girl who died. So that would be 30 years. And that was just for the imprisonment. That wasn't for when he got out, so probation wasn't included in that 30 years. And so he didn't know what his fate was. We didn't know what his fate was. And we went through a trial. It lasted a week. And by the end of that week, Eric was convicted of 2 counts of DUI manslaughter. And then the way that the judicial system goes here, they did a pre-sentence investigation. And then in October of 2003, October 3rd, Eric had his sentencing. And so my family showed up, and his family showed up, and the Dickson family were there. And over here, I don't know if it's the same there, but over here, when you have a trial like that, at the end, at the sentencing, they allow the victims or the victim's family a moment to speak. And so when it was my moment to speak, I remember that I told Eric I didn't want to, I wanted him to receive my message. So I wasn't angry at that moment. I was just relaying to him what his choice on May 11th, 2002 had cost my family. And I couldn't really go into what it cost the Dickson family, but it was very similar. But I just told him everything that we had to go through during the last year of cleaning out Meagan's apartment at school, and then just holidays and her birthday, and it was just a lot of emotional things that we had to go through, and all the first things that you go through after someone that you love dies. And then in the middle of what I wanted to say to Eric, I looked over at him, looked him in the eyes, and I said, "Eric, I forgive you." And that was a huge moment for me that I'm going to talk to you about in just a minute. But there's a lot of reasons behind that. And then Eric was able to stand at the end of everybody speaking. And for the first time, we all heard from him. And at this point, he was 25 years old. And he had been incarcerated since July or April, I think, of that year, maybe July. I don't really, I guess it was July after he was convicted. They arrested him immediately. And no, that's wrong. I'm sorry. He was not incarcerated at the time, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, he stood to speak. He turned around, and he just, from the very bottom of his gut, he just cried and shared with us how sorry he was. And that moment in time was so, to some people, they think, well, that's kind of trivial or trite. It doesn't really matter what he says, because you've lost your daughter. And for me and my family, that was a huge moment for him to say that he was sorry, because I had not heard from him yet. So as time went on, that day, the judge went out, and when he came back, the judge went out, and he comes back and he says, "Eric, I'm going to give you 11 years for Meagan, 11 years for Lisa. You will get 4 years probation for Meagan, 4 years probation for Lisa." So basically it boiled down to 22 years in prison and 8 years probation, because the judge ran his 2 sentences consecutively for 22 years. And that means back to back. He would serve them back to back. But the judge also told us that he could structure Eric's sentences concurrently, and he could serve them at the same time and get out after 11 years. But the judge chose the consecutive sentencing. And I can tell you that for me, I felt relief to know what his fate was, and to know that part of our story had just ended. We knew his fate. He was going to go to prison. But I can also tell you that as I left the courtroom that day, I was not 100% happy. And I thought about that. It's like, why do I not feel 100% better? And then I realized it was because nobody won. You see, in an event like this, in a situation like ours, Eric made a really bad choice. And because of his choice, 2 people died. And it doesn't matter how many years he goes to prison. The only way for us to win would be if Meagan and Lisa could come back. And they're not coming back to this world, no matter how many years he serves in prison. And then for his family, his life, it's not over, but basically life as he knew it is definitely over. And he's going to go to prison. And now his parents are going to have to drive, an hour or 2 to go visit him. And so it's just, nobody can win in a situation like this. So I hope that you take it into your heart and realize that when you make choices, and Eric would tell you that his choice was very selfish that he made that day. He was only thinking of himself. He wasn't thinking of other people or what his choice could do to others. And so he went off to prison that day in 2003. And then in March of 2004, I had already been thinking about this, and I decided to share this story with others in hopes to keep other people from making the same choice that Eric made that night. And so that is how you found me, because I still do that. I still share this story. And it's my hope that even in India that you will learn something today and realize that you have to be careful the choices that you make when you're on the road, and especially when you're driving, because other people are out there driving too, and you don't want to be selfish in your choices. So as time went on, and this is very pertinent for you to understand what's happened since Eric went to prison. Over here, you can, the inmates can put together a calling list of people that they would like to be in touch with, and the Department of Corrections will approve it or not approve it. My mom asked me if she could get on his calling list, and I was also contemplating getting on his calling list, but I just kind of took a step back and let my mother do it, because I knew that she wanted to reach out to Eric. And so Eric began calling my mother, because she couldn't call him. He would call her, and she would tell me about those conversations that they had. So I'm getting to know Eric not only through letters and through cards, because he was sending us cards and letters, and I would respond. I'm not that good at writing letters, and so he would get one every now and then from me. And you might think that that's kind of odd that I would want to be in touch with him, but there's so many reasons behind that. I needed it for my own personal psychological benefit, if you will, my mental health. I needed to talk to him and find out a lot about him, to understand what led up to this moment, other than what they had said in the trial. And so anyway, my mom was getting to know him. She's telling me about their calls. I was at her house. It's about somewhere in 2005. And the phone rang, and it was Eric calling. And then I heard my mother say hello, and that she was doing fine. And then she said, "Hold on a minute, I'll put her on." So I know that Eric asked about me. And I got on the phone and I said hello. And the very first thing that he said to me was, "I just want you to know that I take full responsibility for what I did that night. And I know that if I had not been drinking, that Meagan and Lisa would still be alive today." And if you remember, he had blamed someone else. That's why we had the trial, because he said somebody else cut him off. So now he's accepting responsibility. And for me, I knew that was huge. I needed to hear him accept responsibility. And so I encouraged him to let everyone else know. So he started writing letters. He wrote to my daughters and my son and my ex-husband and the Dicksons, and I think even my parents and my brother and my sister. He told everyone that he took responsibility. My daughter Michelle called me after she received the letter from Eric, and she said, "Mom, is it a burden on you that he's going to be in prison for 22 years?" And for me, it was a huge burden. And so I was kind of relieved to hear her ask me that. And then I started really thinking about things, and I knew that his parents were appealing his sentences. They had been to the Florida Appellate Court, to the Florida Supreme Court, and now they were on their way to the United States Supreme Court to appeal his sentences. They were trying to get them shortened. And it's a very costly thing to do. And so I had this idea, didn't know if it would work. And I just went to them and I said, they didn't live here. I lived in Pensacola. They lived in Tallahassee, which is about 3 hours away. And at the time I had moved down to the middle of Florida. So I was in St. Petersburg, which from them is about 4 hours away, but I was headed home to Pensacola, and I was driving through Tallahassee, called them, asked them if I could meet them face to face. It was Eric's grandmother's 92nd birthday, which is Gary, his dad's mom, was her birthday. And they invited me to dinner with them. And so it was a little awkward because I didn't know this family. I'd only encountered them a few times during the trial and the sentencing. And so I stopped in and I told them, I said, well, I know you're appealing his sentences. I know it's very costly. And I want to just throw something out there that I don't know if we can do this or not. But what if we went to the judge and we got a hearing before the judge and we asked him to restructure Eric's sentences to 11 years so that, to a concurrent, so that he could get out after 11 years. They were absolutely blown away. His mom, I can still see her just, you know, river of tears streaming down her face and hugging me and thanking me. So in August of 2006, it took some maneuvering through the rest of that year and up until August of 2006. But we were granted a hearing for Eric, and we basically, it's called a mercy hearing. We went back before, this time it was a different judge, but we just asked him to restructure Eric's sentences, and he granted that for Eric. So Eric was able to speak at the end of all of that, and we were able to meet him prior to that. He was incarcerated. He was at the jail through the glass. And the reason I tell you these things is because I think it's important to know about forgiveness, because maybe you're watching this event today and you have had someone that you love be killed by another person's choice, no matter whether it was on the road or whatever, however, or you have someone in your life you need to forgive. And I'm just going to touch on this briefly about the healing power of forgiveness. And for me, I learned some things about it, that it didn't mean that, you know, forgiving him didn't mean that he got away with what he did, because he definitely didn't. He went to prison. And it doesn't mean that someone does, because they have to live with it. And I know that he still has to live with what the choice that he made on that day. And it didn't mean that he shouldn't be punished. He went to prison. And for me, you know, I thought that it might betray Meagan and Lisa, because I just thought, you know, those two girls don't deserve to be betrayed by me forgiving him. But what I believe is that my beliefs, my faith tells me that they're in a better place than here on this earth, and that they would want me to forgive, because what forgiveness does for you is it releases you from the burden of just hatred and bitterness and anger. I learned this expression: if you don't forgive, it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So the poison that you're drinking, if you don't forgive someone, is hatred, bitterness, and anger. And those three emotions can just wreck your life. They will destroy you, and they're doing nothing to the other person. And so for me and my family, and for those people who loved Meagan and Lisa, that was very huge for us to learn how to forgive him so that we could all move forward. And then for Eric, it was also huge. Even though I didn't really do it for him, I did it for me, to release me from dragging all of that hatred and bitterness into the rest of my life, and having grandkids born into the world, and hating somebody that they never even met. So if you think about it, the healing is huge for me and my family, and for the Dickson family. They had to forgive him in order for this to happen. They had to come and help us get this done. So over the years, I began speaking and traveling around and getting invited here and there to share my story. And I just thought, you know, it would be huge if Eric could join me as I speak, even though he's incarcerated, and he would be there still, you know, 11 years total. Well, and actually in Florida, you have to serve 85% of your sentence. But I just kept thinking about it, and I kept asking people. It's not done, because, you know, to take an inmate with you, you know, and I wouldn't be actually taking him with me. The sheriffs would have to bring him to events, you know, in schools or with the military, whoever I was speaking to. And I finally went to the prison, and I asked the Department of Corrections to allow it. And there's a whole lot to that story, but just the bottom line is they said that they would allow it. And so over the course of the next 2 years, that was in 2010, by the time I figured out what I was going to do, how to get him able to join me. We had done one video together. Well, not together, but the people interviewed me and my girls and Eric's family. And then they went to the prison and interviewed Eric in prison. And it was a powerful video. And I could see how effective that was for people to hear, not only from me as a mother who lost my child, but from him as the offender, the person who caused the crash that killed her. And so the Department of Corrections allowing this was huge. So what happened is I got to know over here, our sheriffs in the different states and the different counties in your state, they have a group called, well, in Florida, it's called the Florida Sheriff's Association, and they meet several times a year. And I went to their one of their conferences and started asking them. I had another sheriff, the one that was local here, that knew the story and was all for helping me. And he introduced me to sheriffs, and I asked them if they would be willing to go pick him up at prison, bring them to their counties, house him in their jails, and then bring him to events at their schools. And they were interested. So over the course of the next 2 years, from 2010 when we started, and we started April 22nd, 2010, at the school that Meagan and Lisa graduated from, their high school in Gulf Breeze, Florida. And then we traveled into 40 of our 67 counties in Florida over the next 2 years until he got released. So he got released in November 26th of 2012. And we shared our story with thousands of people, mostly young people at schools. And then Eric was released from prison, and the Department of Corrections, didn't own him anymore. And so he continued to travel with me and speak. But I wanted you to know those things because I know that your event that you've been working with, I don't know everything that you've done so far, but I did a little bit of research. I was sent the information from last year's event, and my hat is off to you because I see that your efforts are huge and you've got a lot of people involved, and that's what it's going to take. All of us working together in educating people of what can happen, and thinking about what you guys have done already. And you've probably had a lot of those events already this year that you're continuing. But I wanted to also encourage you. I don't know how your country is as far as you being able to do what I've done, but and it depends on the inmate, obviously. So Eric was in prison, and I just had this, you call it a gut feeling. I just knew in my heart that he came from a good family. I knew that he did not intentionally kill Meagan and Lisa. And we felt that it would be more detrimental for him to stay in prison for 22 years. And also, and I'm sure that you have the same situation, it's expensive for the country to house inmates. So someone causing a car crash, that causes economic burden for not only the families, but for the state, for your country. And then the expense of them going to prison and having to feed them and house them. And there's so many expenses. So for Florida, they ended up, he served 9 years, 4 months of his sentence. That was 85%. So they had all of the rest of that time that he would have been in prison. He would still be in prison today. His release date was 2022. And so he would still be there today. And so it saved all of that money from 2012 until 2022 that he would be incarcerated. And then for us as the being victims' families, finding forgiveness and being able to move forward, and seeing what Eric has been able to do with his life, giving him a second chance, and then for him to be willing to share his story so that other people would not make the same choice that he made. That has been a huge way to educate people. And we've traveled all around the United States. We've done a lot of military presentations. We've done a lot of presentations at churches and schools. And so I believe that I believe that you can't educate people too much. And I believe that whatever you can do through public service announcements, through events where you're, you know, at your remembrance tree, and I wanted to say that I loved that idea, and wanted to encourage you to think about it. And I don't know, you know, cultural differences sometimes, and I apologize that I don't know if this would offend anyone in your country, but over here, we have reminders of people not to drive under the influence. And I'm going to do this one day, but we have these signs that are say drive safely on them. And this one, if you can see, I don't know, can you see it? It shows Meagan, and it's in memory. We have drive safely signs, and then these go on the side of the road, but they don't have the picture of the person in it. But that's something that I would like to do a campaign for, because I believe that when you show people a face and you associate a face with what you're trying to educate them with, a story, which is what you're doing today by hearing my story, I believe that is just a huge way to get people to think about what they're doing. And so as I wrap up what I wanted to say to you today, I just wanted to tell you, when I go into schools or when I share this story, and I want to do it today, what I ask people, what I ask of people, because I can't live your life for you, I can't make your choices for you, but I hope that people realize that it does boil down to a choice. And I want everyone who hears this message to realize how valuable you are. You are valuable. Other people are valuable. Life is valuable, and it can be very fragile, especially when people are making choices that they don't even realize can affect someone by either taking their life or injuring them badly. And then you have to live with your choices. And so what I do is I ask people to, and this goes with not just drinking and driving, because that's against the law here. It goes with texting and driving. People are on their phones all the time when they're doing everything. Our phones are just connected to us in such a way, you know, and it's a learning process that you just cannot be on your phone if you're driving a car or driving a vehicle. You have to pay attention to what's going on. So there's so many things that people do while they're in their car. So what I've come to ask is that you do three things. That you make it, overall, it's under the umbrella of making a plan. You have to plan ahead. You have to think about when you're going somewhere. If you're going to a party, for example, and your friends or whoever you're going to meet, everybody's drinking, then you have to plan ahead on how you're going to get home safely. And I just encourage you to decide that you will never drive under the influence of drugs or alcohol or your cell phone or anything that can influence you to take your eyes off the road or to impair your ability to drive. And so driving sober minded is huge. I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you, when you're going somewhere with your friends, plan ahead, talk to your friends and talk about, okay, if we're going to go to this party, maybe somebody can be a designated driver and that person doesn't drink, and then they drive everybody home and get them home safely. Or over here, we plan with Uber, or I don't know if Uber has made it around the world yet or not, but that's where you can, you have an app and you can just have somebody come pick you up and take you home. And it's so easy to make that plan of either having a designated driver, getting a cab, having Uber, someone pick you up and take you home. And then I encourage you to, if you see that your friends or whoever you're getting in the car with is under the influence of drugs or alcohol or even their cell phone, that you don't ride with them, and instead that you try to stop them from doing it. You ask them if you can drive or take their phone away from them. You say, like, can I do text for you, or will you just not do that while we're riding? If they're drinking, just don't let them drive. Just whatever you've got to do to stop them from driving. It's so important that we make our own choice, that we're not going to ever drive under the influence, and that we stop other people who are, and that we just don't ride. We don't put our life in danger, because like I said, everyone is valuable. You have so much value, and you don't even, sometimes you get in the car with someone, you don't even think about it, and they're in control of what happens to you. So that's the bottom line of the message that Eric and I share. And when he shares his story, people understand that he, like I said, he came from a good background. His dad was in the military. He was an attorney in the military. He retired, and then he was an attorney for the state of Florida and the Department of Environmental Protection. His mom had a really nice job in our school system as an administrator, and they poured love into him, and they tried to educate him. So, like I said, we can't educate people too much. And so I definitely applaud your efforts in this event that you're doing every year to educate other people of what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to accomplish. And the bottom line is we're trying to save lives. And so that's my hope today, that someone's life is saved. I hope that it's lots of people. I hope that everybody listening will just decide that, you don't want to be, Eric will say, please don't be me. Don't make the choices that I made. And you don't want to end up, you don't want to end up killing someone or hurting someone and having to live with that, because that is very detrimental to who you are. Eric is out of prison. And like I said, we still do some presentations. COVID has affected everybody. We've not been able to travel together this past year, but I've done a few webinars like this one. And we're still trying to educate people of the dangerous consequences of driving under the influence. And so once again, I want to thank you for allowing me to share my story today. And I want to turn it back over to you and let you, if we have questions or however you want to proceed from here. And if there's anything I didn't cover that you might want me to, I talk a lot. So anyway, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much to you as well for taking out the time and sharing your journey with us and telling us about the power of the healing of forgiveness and making some sound choices, and not, you can say, if your choice will not affect only you but may affect other persons as well.
Yes.
So I think we can move to questions if anybody has any questions or any comments, or I would even say if anybody has anything to share as well. Attendees, you can please use the chat box, and in case you want to, you can say interact with Renee. I can give you a panelist access, and you can share your journey with everyone.
Sometimes it takes asking a question. So do you have any questions yourself? Sometimes it takes that to get people to ask questions and get nervous or embarrassed.
Yeah, but we can wait for a minute or two if anybody has any questions.
True.
Professor Parida, any comments from your side?
It's really nice to hear from Rini. I was just thinking, like, in what way are you going to share your experience? It's very, very difficult. I really do not know in India if we have that kind of awareness, but it's going to help. There were three things. One, you talked about the choices, and in our national social service, we have a lot of young people, those who are going to drive. So they must understand the implications of their choices, in what way the other's life is going to get affected. So that is one. We teach forgiveness in road safety, which is very important. They say for designing roads, the idea of forgiveness is very, very important. So I could see in all the narrations, which especially from your side, it requires a lot of courage to think through in a very proactive way, and then to share your experiences with everyone with a very bold face, so that our young people, they understand the things. And third thing, specifically with respect to the road traffic sign, being a traffic engineer, I am interested about the traffic sign. But you said, like, if the face comes, then definitely it will have some impact. So these are certain things, it's going to help improve the safety situation. In India, we lose lot of lives. So that's one of the reason this particular month is we are organizing lot of activities. So today there are a lot of young people, those who are connected, and our National Social Service (NSS) is very proactive. And I'm sure the message which you have shared will have a deep impact in the minds of all my young attendees. So thank you. I would like to say that. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
And I do believe that it's very important to put a face with a story because that does make a lot of impact. And it is my
Yeah.
hope that your young people and everyone will realize how important their choices are when they get behind the wheel of a car or whatever they're driving, that they realize that. So yes, you're very welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a member of our Indian Roads Congress where we deliberate about the traffic signs. So I would at least share means your idea. So let me see. And I believe at least in some places, probably that can be tried. That is for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh,
So
good.
I would definitely take it up with my other colleagues in the committee.
Okay. Yes.
So thank you. So Harkirat, maybe if our other friends would like to ask something, you can allow them.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, if anybody wants to interact with Renee, you can surely let me know through chat, and I will give you the panelist access or any questions you have. And I guess the worst can be if you want to ask a question and hesitate to ask it. That can be one of the worst choice you are making, I would say.
Maybe
Then some
Harkirat,
of them,
anything
yeah,
from you?
yeah, no, not such any questions, but I will just, you can say, thanks a lot to Renee for sharing her journey. And I would say the more important is the message which is conveyed through the journey rather than the experience itself, the message, the forgiveness and the choices when you're on road. Since you're not impacting only you, but you're also impacting the drivers around you. And it's
Right.
again not only on road as well, even in your house as well. When you speak something, if you speak ill to anyone, you're not impacting only you, you're not impacting the other person around, but also yourself as well. So choices are really important to me in our life.
Yes. Yes. You know, if I could say something too, I know I've talked a lot, but I wanted to just tell you that I was very impressed also with the street, with everything. You know what I really, there's two things that I really loved. I loved the street skit that they did, that the young people did, because as you know, involving young people in your efforts, talking to them, asking them how they can be reached the best way to, you know, for making good choices. And the other thing that I loved, because I have tried to educate parents as well, I absolutely loved that you did the questionnaire of the kids asking them how their parents drive. Because and I actually sent that to, I'm a part of several safety committees with our Department of Transportation in the state of Florida, and I'm on a teen driver safety committee. And I sent that to the director of our committee and said, we need to do this here because it's a bold thing to do, but I do it with my grandchildren. I'm like, so how are your parents? You know, if they ever have their phone in their hand, you tell them that they need to put that down or whatever. Children can have a really big effect on what their parents do. So I loved that you were educating all the way down to the young ones, because they have to learn it from the beginning. That's very great that you do that.
Yeah, the major inspiration behind that was the traits you have learned in the childhood. They stay with you
Yes.
for the rest of your life. So if and the children, they won't lie. That's for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, because they will surely speak truth on your face. Like, my father is driving like this, my mother is driving like this, but they won't lie. So that's the impact they can have.
That's right.
I think we don't have any questions. So maybe
Arkirat, do you have the email address of Renee? If any student wants to post a mail at later point of time, means they can write a mail to you.
Yes.
Can we share your email ID with the attendees?
Yes, in fact, that's what I was just going to offer. Just you
Yeah.
feel free to share my email, and if someone wants to reach out to me, and I have a Facebook page. If anybody's interested, it's facebook.com/DUI promise, similar to my email address, which is DUIpromise.com.
Okay, good.
Yes, I have shared the email ID in the chat box. If anybody has any questions or want to discuss or want to, you can say, know more about her experience, they can surely contact you over the email.
Perfect.
Okay, so I think we can conclude with the session. And again, I would like to thank you a lot for your time and efforts in sharing this inspirational experience, I would say, and bringing out the summary of that experience as well. Making good choices and power of the forgiveness.
You're very welcome. And honestly, it was my honor to do it. So I'm very privileged that you even invited me to share and to be a part of this. So I love that you can connect with everybody around the world. It's a wonderful thing, the internet, and being able to do that. So that's a good thing about technology. But thank you so much too for asking me. But it was my privilege.
Okay. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.